Good morning and welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways. Coyote in the not Highlands. Actually, I'm in the Highlands. I'm in a little town that is higher up than the mountainside, so it's actually kind of still in the Highlands. Let's talk about this for a moment. So, if the parts are symbols, then the actions towards them are symbolic. Also, so here's the idea. All right. We operate symbolically in the universe. Like everything you do is an interpretation of reality. There is no way to really approach reality. And this is a really hard one, especially with modern, traditional conservative, notably Christian thinkers and a lot of philosophy. Is a lot of people really, the core concept here is that there is an immutable, 100% true for all people at all times, objective truth. There is a reality, a fundamental reality, and that everything involved in communication is about that reality. And it's not. There's nothing at all. It's all symbols. You never, in a normal life, and I'm going to say this, there's some caveats to this, but in a normal life with normal perception here on Earth, doing your brain and your mind and everything and how you operate in the universe, you never touch reality. You only touch symbols. But there's some interesting side effects to that, and one of those side effects is that your actions are symbolic. So your actions, in a lot of senses, aren't real either. They are symbolic of reality. The map is not the territory, but the map might as well be the territory if you're not really aware of the map not being the territory. This is all very fun and interesting and philosophically weird and, basically meaningless symbols. I love it. Okay. Reality isn't something that you can approach in an objective sense. Let's just leave that on the table and no, we can't leave it on the table. A lot of people really don't believe this. A lot of people really are firmly convinced, programmed in a deep state of belief that there is a singular objective reality and that everything, all of the arguments and everything revolves around people dealing or not dealing with that singular objective reality. I noticed this. This is a really big one in our society, and it comes out of, you had the GI generation. So that's the generation that went to World War II. These are people who were born in the early 20th century, and they went through that early progressive model of education, and they went through, a couple of wars. These were the kind of modern new wars that really changed things for people. So there's that. That's a significant. I don't know how to describe it. It's significant in their programming. There is an objective reality. There's a clear-cut thing that ought to be true. That's what it is, and they call that objective reality. You have this materialist, positivist science basis of things, so-called science. And everything is going to be immutably true on some level if you find the right stuff. And your stuff is right, and other people who disagree with you are wrong, and it's all objective truth and reality. And then that goes into the silent generation, which, they grew up. The silent generation basically grew up with a post-war atomic world, and it really fucked with things. Then you have the boomers, which the boomers were. So the GI generation, you had a lot of people who fell out of that. World War II did a big number on a lot of people's minds and brains. You had a lot of spiritual flowering out of that people don't really realize. It didn't come of age for a while. But these World War II veterans are the people who really made these 60s happen. It wasn't the boomers who were driving this. The boomers were participating in it, but a lot of the people who really were getting spiritual. And there was a lot of very positive spiritual stuff in the 60s, okay? There's a lot of crazy stuff too, but I'm going to say that was the flowering. You see, the 60s were... Flowers are death. They're very pretty, but flowering is when things die and the embryonic seeds get impregnated, basically, come to fruition, and then you have the death and the seed and then the new growth cycle. So if you think of the 60s as flowering, where did all of that come from? Where did the plants come from? Where did the whole thing come from? And it came from the people who experienced World War II and came out of it with a sense of spiritual awakening. There's a lot of stuff that can create a spiritual awakening, and being aware, being around when the first nuclear bombs go off, well, that's one of those things that could do that to you, you know? The camps, going and liberating the camps, just there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens. And a lot of people go very sideways, all right? And then the 60s, they are what drove the 60s, okay? The early boomers who were there, being teenagers and young adults in the 60s, they weren't getting this from nowhere, you know? And yes, there's the commies and the weathermen and all the other stuff, but that's not what I'm talking about. Okay, so there's this rebellion against this objective reality kind of program. And it gets shut down a lot. Look at people like Leary. You know, Leary went a little bit off the deep end with some of his stuff, but he was doing some research. He had a point, but it wasn't his excesses that actually killed him, or killed the whole, whatever, call it psychedelic psychology movement. It wasn't the excesses that killed it, it was the successes that killed it. Because the power structures really want their boring, materialist, positivist, objective reality. And you're trained with that. You're brought up with that. You know, we had that rebellion after World War II, and then it went back, right? Everything went back. And the 70s and the 80s was very, very go along to get along, materialist. You know, I rebelled against that. I'm Generation X, and the world of the 80s was a horror show for us. We were going to have to lose our identities completely and live in corporate America to buy houses and stuff, and it was just absolutely horrible. I never got over the horror of this. Most of my life struggles have actually been trying to deal with the system, work within the system, while having a horror of the system. So, you know, that's a thing. But it's all based on this objective reality thing, this idea that there is a singular objective reality, and that basically everyone you don't like doesn't touch that reality as deeply and as firmly as you do, which is quite the conceit. But all of the parts, all of the stuff you access, everything is just symbols. Symbols that may or may not describe reality, and your symbols don't match another person's doesn't mean that another person's are wrong. Pragmatically, of course, it doesn't mean they're wrong, because pragmatically whatever works. You know, if the map works to increase your quality of life, then the map works to increase your quality of life. Generally speaking, we want to increase the quality of all lives around us, not just ours, but without hurting ourselves. And this is the big problem with a lot of politics right now, is that everyone is focused on increasing quality of life by hurting other people. That's the goal. Which only feeds on the hunger of the power hungry, because the power is their security. Doesn't work so well, does it? Anyway, the symbols, all the parts of everything you touch, grasp, think about are symbols. Symbols, not the thing themselves. If there is an underlying core reality, and it's very hard to tell people that there isn't, there may not be, because you'll never be able to see it anyway. People really believe there is one true reality, the real world. Well, all you can ever touch is symbols. So if all you're doing is touching the symbols, then all of your actions are symbolic. So your actions aren't necessarily true or real. This is the mind-bending part. Your actions aren't real. Your actions just have an appearance, a symbolic appearance to you and to others, and that the appearance to others can be different from the appearance to you. So reality is somewhat malleable, which really pisses people off and really undercuts their belief in the universe. But there it is. It's true, you know. your actions are symbols. And now finally, 10 minutes into the video, we get to the point of the video. As usual with me, I have to ramble forever first. So everyone, just when you get to one of my videos, skip forward 5 or 10 minutes, right? You'll get to the point. I'll get to the point eventually. Your actions are symbols, which means you shouldn't put too much stock, reality, identity, or importance on your actions either. This has huge implications for morality, ethics, and all sorts of other stuff, real world activity and judgments. But your actions are symbols, not a core Platonic reality. So stick that in your hat, I guess. I don't know what else to say about that. Just realize that your actions are symbols. And my dog is scratching on the carpet. He likes to do this. He likes to mess with my videos. Your actions are symbols because you're operating on symbols. You're not operating on reality. Now, how does that work with right action? Right action feels more real and feels more natural. Well, you're in agreement with all of the symbolic handling of the universe, God, yourself as a soul, however it works. You're acting in concert, which means all the symbols are matching up and everything feels right. That doesn't mean, however, that it's more real than any other disjointed set of symbols. Just that it works better, that it feels right, that it goes along with your soul's needs or goals. So everything is a symbol. Everything you perceive is symbols, not the reality. So all of your actions are just operating on symbols. So nothing you do is real in the sense that you can't escape or change it. This has deep implications for positive life aspects, for thinking in terms of positivity, for living a positive life, because all of your actions can be negative or positive symbols. And that's an artificial duality, but just let's run with it. You can input them, you can take them, you can extract meaning from them, you can put meaning into them in a negative or positive fashion. And that is super important. Everything's symbolic, nothing is really, really real. You can put positivity and love or negativity and hate into anything, and your quality of life is largely dependent on how you choose to do that. Stay sideways.